Tonight, the chronic nursing shortage continues in the Northern Health region. Drug deaths. Northeast BC sees a 75% decrease from last January. An investigation is launched looking into Blueberry River councillor Shelley Gauthier. Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight with another sign of BC's healthcare system on the brink as staffing shortages continue to plague hospitals across the Peace region. They've been blamed for the 6 diversions in Chetwynd and 3 in Dawson Creek so far this year. Northern Health's vacancy rate for emergency room nurses is 42%. It's a shocking number for a health authority that's been saying for the past 4 years they're working to fix the problem. But the MLA for Peace River South saying it shouldn't come as a surprise.
I'm not surprised. I'm very disappointed, but I'm unfortunately not surprised. I too am without a family doctor along with other members of my family, and unfortunately those don't surprise me.
The vacancy rate for emergency room nurses in Northeast BC is 29%, while the overall shortage of nursing positions here for our region stands at 21%. That's according to Northern Health CEO Cyril Panessa, who shared the stats with Peace River Regional District directors in a recent update. Panessa says while the numbers are still very high, it's an improvement. He's crediting Go Health BC for emergency room closures being reduced. The focus now will be on expanding the program and work to hire and retain more staff. The health authority will also explore hybrid emergency rooms with virtual doctors and clinical support. A total of 283 Northern Health staff were approved for the $30,000 rural incentive offered last year, the overall workforce increasing by nearly 24% since January of 2021. The BC Coroner Service releasing numbers for January concerning the toxic drug crisis. The number of overdose deaths remains under 160 for the province for the 4th straight month. A total of 152 British Columbians lost their lives to unregulated drugs in January. That amounts to 4.9 people per day, but it's a 30% drop from the same period last year. Fentanyl was detected in 77% of the cases. As for the Northern Health region, it had the 2nd highest number of per capita deaths in BC. Of the lives lost, 8 were within Northern Health's authority, while here in Northeast BC, 1 person died. That's a decrease from 4 the previous January. Toxic drugs remain the leading cause of unnatural deaths for those who are aged 10 to 59 years old. The Blueberry River First Nations will launch an investigation into Councillor Shelley Gauthier. The update follows a month-long effort by some members to remove the councillor. At a recent Blueberry Council meeting, a group from the late Edward Absassin family presented a petition against the councillor. It accuses Gauthier of ignoring directives and failing to provide transparency on resolutions that have been signed for the family. But another letter from the same family argues that the petitioners don't represent the majority view. The council will now investigate the claim as required by the election code. An independent investigator will be hired to assess the petition and compile a report. And if necessary, council says, the process will take time, but updates will be provided at official meetings and through public statements. Well, did you see some smoke along Highway 97 near Fort Nelson today? Well, there's a reason for it. The BC Wildfire Service assisting the Northern Rockies Regional Airport in burning piles of debris. The 3 piles were burned to improve aircraft safety by reducing the amount of flammable material near the airport. The Wildfire Service overseeing the process to prepare, control, and monitor the burning. They continue to encourage residents to report wildfires, unattended campfires, and open burning violations ahead of the upcoming wildfire season in British Columbia. Residents of Fort St. John will have some extra time to pay their utility bill amid the recent cyber attack. The city saying today there's been a delay in sending out February statements. Those who have yet to receive their bill can expect it by next week. Late penalties for the billing cycle, which were originally due on March the 31st, will be waived because of the delay. It comes as a ransomware attack crippled city services last month. While most of the data has been restored, the My City Hall portal to make payments online remains offline. An Alberta company working in the Peace region facing a hefty fine from WorkSafe BC. La Prairie Crane Limited has been fined just over $50,000. According to WorkSafe, a mobile crane being used at an oil and gas site had not been inspected for the previous 12 months. It's not the first time this has happened. In issuing the fine, WorkSafe saying this is a repeat violation. The province tabled legislation to arm itself with emergency powers amid the ongoing trade war with the U.S. The bill tabled by the Attorney General would give Cabinet power to make certain types of regulation changes. And those would include things like adding tolls on U.S. commercial vehicles that are traveling on BC highways from Washington to Alaska. It could also respond to executive orders from the Trump administration that target Canada in real time. It's being described as emergency legislation, and it wouldn't require debate in the legislature.
Whatever the emergency is that the president incurs upon Canada in an effort to damage us, that we're able to respond quickly to minimize the damage. We see this as emergency legislation. This is not everyday legislation.
Giving themselves a blank check to do anything they want without any oversight, of the legislature, and without oversight and transparency to the people in British Columbia.
If approved, the NDP would have to report twice a year on any regulations that are created. The temporary bill will expire in 2027. And Opposition Leader John Roustad introduced a bill today that, if passed, would see us stop changing our clocks twice a year. The first reading of the Interpretation Uniform Pacific Time Zone Amendment Act passed in the legislature. Roustad told the legislature the vast majority of British Columbians are just tired of time change, and he adds, that can lead to sleep deprivation, health issues, and many other problems.
It's time to bring this to an end. And I can't believe that this government is saying they have to wait for the Americans first before they would enact this so that we no longer have to change times in British Columbia.
Premier Eby responded to the legislation saying while he is sympathetic to the idea, it's not a priority for his government due to the ongoing trade war. Health officials are underscoring the importance of being immunized as they try to contain a measles outbreak in northern Alberta. The outbreak is in the John Doerr Prairie, about 750 kilometers north of Edmonton. There have been 6 confirmed cases and 1 probable case since the outbreak was declared on Sunday. Vaccines are mostly completely effective against the highly transmissible virus. Between 25 to 40% of all measles cases require hospitalization. Infectious disease specialists are pleading with people to get their immunizations, but Danielle Smith's government is preaching parental choice. Health Minister Adriana Lagrange says her family has had the shot, but she stopped short of endorsing it for all Albertans. It was a history-making day, marking a new chapter in Canadian history. Mark Carney is now Canada's 24th Prime Minister, and with an election looming and an ongoing trade war, there's no shortage of challenges facing the new leader. Rachel Aiello has more from Ottawa.
Mark Carney became Canada's 24th Prime Minister today. Presenting his new government to the Governor-General, Carney vowed to meet the moment.
I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Before the ceremony got underway, Justin Trudeau resigned privately, a muted end after a grand beginning to his near decade in power.
Congratulations, Prime Minister.
Now, Carney is looking to turn the page, removing several Trudeau-era ministers and walking away from gender parity. Carney's cabinet includes 23 people, 12 men and 11 women. Among the major moves, François-Philippe Champagne takes on the key finance portfolio. Stephen Guilbeault has lost the climate file, moving into a new role focused on Canadian culture and identity. And Kamal Khera, said to be a top party fundraiser, is now the health minister. Carney has also promoted 3 rookie MPs. Nova Scotian Cody Blois is in, as are Ontario MPs Ariel Kayabega and Ali Assassi. Maine Liberal leadership rival Chrystia Freeland is also back in the fold, accepting a lower position than she's held in years. But how long this cabinet will be in place is a big question. In his first press conference as Prime Minister, Carney said Canadians should expect to go to the polls early.
There will be other news in the coming days with respect to ensuring that we have as strong a mandate that is needed for the time.
Jagmeet Singh says before that happens, he's willing to buy Carney a bit more time.
We want to see a plan put in place rapidly to create jobs in Canada, and then we can go to election.
But Pierre Poilievre, whose campaign against Carney is already well underway, said he's ready for Canadians to have their say.
Mark Carney thinks Canadians are stupid. He thinks that a little bit of cosmetic surgery will allow the Liberals to disguise who they are and make people forget what they did for 10 years in order to elect them to a fourth Liberal term.
Carney confirmed today his first trip as Prime Minister will be to Europe, and his inner circle is also working on getting him on the phone with U.S. President Donald Trump in the next couple of days. Rachel Aiello, CTV News, Ottawa.
And in his first order as Prime Minister today, Mark Carney eliminated the highly controversial consumer carbon tax. The order in council signed by Carney will end the levy on April the 1st. Now, the policy has been deeply unpopular and had been the focus of conservative attacks on the Liberals for more than 2 years. And late today, BC Premier David Eby also signaling he will end the carbon tax here in British Columbia. Tariffs and a global trade war have been front and center during the G7 talks in Charlevoix, Quebec this week. The foreign ministers put out a joint statement today following the meeting that also included another stark response to any notion of Canada becoming the 51st U.S. state. Jeremy Chiron reports.
In the face of those repeated threats to our sovereignty by U.S. President Donald Trump, the biggest question has been about what unfolded during a meeting yesterday morning between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who today provided some insight.
What I said to the Secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate, period.
And Joly says some of the other G7 leaders weren't aware of how serious the threats are.
The reaction of my colleagues coming from Europe was really about this absurd threat of annexation. Was really is that a joke?
But Canada has been clear Donald Trump is very serious. And today, Secretary Rubio, speaking to U.S. reporters only here in Charlevoix, had this to say.
I'll tell you how that came about, okay? He's in a meeting with Trudeau, and Trudeau basically says that if the U.S. imposes tariffs on Canada, Canada couldn't survive as a nation state, at which point the president said, well, then you should become a state. And that's where this began. That said, the president has made an argument for why. He says he loves Canada. He says he made an argument for why Canada would be better off joining the United States from an economic perspective and the like. He's made that argument repeatedly, and I think it stands for itself.
Now, the G7 leaders here also issued a joint statement today addressing a key priority, Russia's war in Ukraine. They support the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal signed by Ukraine just days ago and warned Russia of new sanctions if Moscow doesn't also agree to a ceasefire. Jeremy Chiron, CTV News, Charlevoix, Quebec.
A capsule is scheduled to lift off this evening on a mission that will bring home 2 astronauts stranded at the International Space Station for months. Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams have been at the orbiting lab since June. They were only supposed to be there for about a week, but NASA decided that several issues with their Starliner capsule made it too risky to use for the return trip to Earth. So a SpaceX craft is slated to blast off tonight and reach the space station by tomorrow night. It'll deliver a new crew and bring the current group home. The liftoff was initially set for this past Wednesday, but was postponed because of a problem with the rocket's ground system. All right, I'll be right back with a look at your weekend weather, but as we head to break, a look at today's closing market numbers.